Welcome to Warhammer 40k 8th edition, Battle Report 14, 1850 points of Chaos Demons of Khorne versus Ultramarines. This will be the chapter-approved Maelstrom of War mission, Race to Victory. Let's take a quick look at the board and where the objectives have been placed. So, starting with this 2-foot by 2-foot section, we have objective marker 3 right here. Then we have this 2-foot by 2-foot section with objective marker 4 right here. And finally on this side we have this 2-foot by 2-foot section with objective marker 1 right here. Moving over to the other side of the board, we have this 2-foot by 2-foot section, which has objective marker 5 next to this crater. Second to last is this 2-foot by 2-foot section with objective marker 6 right here. And then finally, this 2-foot by 2-foot section with objective marker 2 right here in the shadow of this ruin. So now we will roll for which random map the armies will be deploying on today. And here's the roll, getting a 3, which is the deployment map Search and Destroy. And so this will mean we'll have one extra dice roll for determining which army deploys where. And so on a 1, 2, or a 3, one of the armies will deploy in the close left quadrant, and the other army will deploy in the far right. And on a 4, 5, or 6, it will be the opposite. One army will be in the far left, and one army will be in the close right. And so here's the roll, getting a 6, so that means that one army will be in the far left quadrant and one army will be in the close right quadrant. So on a 1, 2, or 3, the Chaos Demons of Khorne will be in the far left and the Ultramarines will be in the close right. On a 4, 5, or 6, they will deploy on the opposite sides. And getting a 6, so they will deploy on the opposite sides. And so then on a 1, 2, or 3, the Chaos Demons of Khorne will begin deploying first, and on a 4, 5, or 6, the Ultramarines will begin deploying first. Getting a 1, so the Chaos Demons of Khorne will begin deploying first. We will be back after the deployment. The deployment is now finished. The Chaos Demons of Khorne began deploying first, but the Ultramarines finished deploying first, and so the Ultramarines will go first unless the Chaos Demons of Khorne are able to seize the initiative. Let's start by taking a look at the Chaos Demons of Khorne army and where they deployed. Starting with the Warlord Skarbrand, one squad of Bloodletters, and both Bloodthirsters of Insensate Rage, which used all 7 of the Chaos Demons of Khorne command points in order to be placed in the warp. And just for reference, these dice is the line for their deployment with the 9-inch quarter circle from the center of the board. And those dice will remain on the board for this battle just so that we sort of know where the deployment zones are for line breaker purposes. So we have a squad of Bloodletters bunched up right here. Skull Cannon number 1, Skull Cannon number 2, the 8 Fleshhounds, the Demon Prince of Khorne with Skull Reaver, the final squad of Bloodletters up against the edge of this side of the deployment zone, and finally, towards the middle of the Chaos Demons of Khorne deployment zone, sitting on objective 5, is the 3rd and final Skull Cannon. So moving over to the Ultramarines deployment, I will also leave the dice for their deployment zone up, just so that we can see where their quarter circle is. Starting with one of the Tactical Marine squads, sitting on objective 4. Then we have the Warlord Rabao Guilliman, front and center. Then a second squad of Tactical Marines winding its way up this ruin. And they are sitting on objective marker 3, and here's the rest of them in the back of the squad. And then on this edge of the deployment zone, we have the final squad of Tactical Marines. And then in the back of the deployment zone, we have the 2 Storm Ravens. Each Storm Raven has a chaplain and a squad of Centurions embarked inside. This Storm Raven right here has the chaplain that does not have the Armor Indomitus, along with Centurion squad number 2, while this Storm Raven over on the right has the chaplain with the Armor Indomitus and also has Centurion Assault squad number 1. And I am sitting the chaplains on top of their respective Storm Ravens, just so that I don't forget. The chaplains are not actually sitting on top of the Storm Ravens for game purposes. And so now we will roll a dice, and on a 6, the Chaos Demons of Khorne seize the initiative. And they fail to seize the initiative. So let's go into Ultramarines turn 1. So, going into Ultramarines turn 1, a reminder that the Ultramarines have 9 command points, and the Chaos Demons of Khorne have 0 command points. The Ultramarines will start by drawing 3 new tactical objective cards, and they draw Big Game Hunter. Score 1 victory point if at least 1 enemy unit with a wounds characteristic of 10 or more was destroyed during this turn. If at least 1 enemy unit with a wounds characteristic of 20 or more was destroyed during this turn, score D3 victory points instead. No Mercy, No Respite. Score 1 victory point if at least 1 enemy unit was destroyed and or failed a morale test this turn. If 3 or more units were destroyed and or failed morale tests, score D3 victory points instead. And Secure Objective 3. Score 1 victory point if you control Objective Marker 3 at the end of your turn. And Objective Marker 3 is right here, currently being controlled by this squad of Tactical Marines. Going into the movement phase, this squad of Tactical Marines will remain still. And this squad of Tactical Marines will remain still. And Rabaut Guilliman will remain still. And this squad of Tactical Marines will remain still. This Storm Raven is going to move at least 20 inches and less than 45 because it will remain in flying mode and it will move up the board towards the Chaos Demons of Khorne deployment zone. And the Storm Raven will finish its movement right here, and it is now within 6 inches of Rabaut Guilliman. This Storm Raven, with the Chaplain with the Armor Indomitus embarked inside, will now do the same thing. And it will finish its movement right here. Going into the shooting phase, we will start with this Tactical Marine squad, and the only model that is within range of the Chaos Demons of Khorne is the Last Cannon, and so the Last Cannon is going to shoot this squad of Fleshhounds to try to knock one of them out. And so first, the Tactical Marine squad is going to use the stratagem Scions of Guilliman for 1 command point, bringing them from 9 down to 8. Use this stratagem when an Ultramarines infantry or Ultramarines biker unit is selected to attack in a shooting or fight phase. You can reroll all hit rolls of 1 for that unit for the rest of the phase. If the unit is a tactical squad or intercessor squad, reroll all failed hit rolls instead. So first, on a 5-up, thanks to Guilliman, do they get the command point back? And they do not. So the Ultramarines are now permanently down to 8 command points. So the Last Cannon shooting the Fleshhounds, hitting on a 3, and it hits. Wounding on a 2, and it wounds. 1 5-up invulnerable save, which passes. Next, this Storm Raven is going to shoot its Hurricane Bolters and its Twin Heavy Bolter into the Fleshhounds, and it will fire its Twin Heavy Plasma Cannon and its Storm Strike Missile Launchers into that Skull Cannon. Starting with the 2 Hurricane Bolters, and it is in rapid fire range, so 24 shots hitting on 3s, and rerolling misses thanks to Guilliman. So getting 17 hits to start, and now for the 7 rerolls, getting 5 more hits, so 22 hits out of 24 shots. Wounding on 4s, and rerolling failed wound rolls, so getting 9 wounds to start, and then the 13 rerolls, getting 5 more wounds, so getting a total of 14 wounds. 14 5-up invulnerable saves, and they pass 5 but fail 9. So 4 Fleshhounds will go down to start, and a 5th Fleshhound will go down to 1 wound. So now 6 shots from the Twin Heavy Bolter, hitting on 3s, getting 3 hits and 3 rerolls. And here's the 3 rerolls, getting 6 hits. Wounding on 3s, getting 4 wounds and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls, getting 6 wounds. 6 5-up invulnerable saves, and they pass 2 but fail 4. And so the wounded Fleshhound loses its last wound, a full Fleshhound goes down, and another Fleshhound goes down to 1 wound. So now the 2 Storm Strike Missile Launchers into the Skull Cannon, hitting on 3s, getting 1 hit and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, getting 2 hits. Wounding on 3s, getting 1 wound and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, getting a 2nd wound. 2 5-up invulnerable saves, and passes both. So then finally, the Twin Heavy Plasma Cannon will fire supercharged shots. 2 D3 shots, getting 4 shots, but the Ultramarines are going to use 1 command reroll, using 1 command point, in order to reroll that 1. So first, on a 5-up, do they get the command point back? And they do not. So the Ultramarines are permanently down to 7 command points. But here's the reroll on the number of shots, and so now they get 6 shots. Hitting on 3s, getting 4 hits and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls, getting 2 more hits, for 6 hits total. Wounding on 3s, getting 5 wounds and 1 reroll. And here's the 1 reroll, getting a 6th wound. 6 5-up invulnerable saves, and passes 3 of them. And so this skull cannon only takes 6 damage, and so it will survive with 1 wound left. Next, this Storm Raven is going to fire, and it will do the exact same thing. It will fire its 2 Hurricane Bolters and its twin Heavy Bolters into the remaining Fleshhounds, and it will fire its Storm Strike Missile Launchers and its twin Heavy Plasma Cannon into the Skull Cannon that's down to 1 wound. Starting with the twin Heavy Bolter against the Fleshhounds, hitting on 3s, getting 5 hits and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, still failing to hit. Wounding on 3s, getting 2 wounds and 3 rerolls. And here's the rerolls, getting 2 more wounds. 4 5-up invulnerable saves, but they failed all 4. And so the Fleshhound that's down to 1 wound and the fully healthy Fleshhound are removed, and this will give the Ultramarines first blood. And that will also mean that the 2 Hurricane Bolters go to waste. So then the 2 Storm Strike Missile Launchers into the Skull Cannon, hitting on 3s, getting 1 hit and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, still failing to hit. Wounding on a 3, and it wounds. 1 5-up invulnerable save, which fails. And that does 3 damage, so the 1 wound on this Skull Cannon is removed. And this does mean that the twin Heavy Plasma Cannon from the Storm Raven is wasted. Next, Guilliman is going to shoot his Hand of Dominion into the Demon Prince of Khorne with Skull Reaver, since it is now the closest visible enemy unit now that that 1 Skull Cannon and those Fleshhounds were killed off. 3 shots, hitting on 2s. 2 hits and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, getting a 3rd hit. Strength 6 versus Toughness 6 means 4s to wound, and getting 3 wounds. Minus 1 AP, so 3 4-up armor saves, and passes 1 but fails 2. So the Demon Prince of Khorne will go from 8 starting wounds down to 4 left. So now the last cannon from this Tactical Marine squad will fire into the Demon Prince of Khorne as well, since it's the closest visible enemy unit. This bolt gun from the Sergeant is also within 24-inch range, however, there is a ruin blocking his line of sight, and so he cannot see the Demon Prince, which means he cannot shoot the Demon Prince. So just the last cannon, hitting on a 3, and it fails to hit, but re-rolling thanks to Guilliman. And here's the re-roll, getting a hit, wounding on a 3, and it wounds. 1 5-up invulnerable save, which passes. And then this last cannon will shoot the Demon Prince of Khorne because it is the closest visible enemy unit. So hitting on a 3, and it hits. Wounding on a 3, and it wounds. 1 5-up invulnerable save, which passes. And so that's the end of the shooting phase. Going into the assault phase, there are no charges to declare, which means there's nothing to resolve in the fight phase, and there are no morale tests to take in the morale phase because that unit of Fleshhounds was completely wiped out. So taking a look at the tactical objective cards, the Ultramarines did not complete Big Game Hunter. They did complete No Mercy, No Respite, but only for 1 victory point because they only fully killed off 2 units. Since that Demon Prince stayed alive, they do not get the D3 victory points. But they also completed Secure Objective 3 for 1 more victory point. And the Ultramarines will hold on to Big Game Hunter. So at the end of Ultramarines turn 1, thanks to achieving First Blood, the Ultramarines are leading with a score of 3 victory points to the Chaos Demons of Khorne, who have 0 victory points. Going into Chaos Demons of Khorne turn 1, a reminder that the Chaos Demons of Khorne have 0 command points, and the Ultramarines have 7 command points. And so the Chaos Demons of Khorne draw 3 new tactical objective cards, and they started by drawing Secure Objective 4, score 1 victory point if you control Objective Marker 4 at the end of your turn. Behind enemy lines, score 1 victory point if you have at least 1 unit completely within the enemy's deployment zone at the end of your turn. If you have at least 3 units within your opponent's deployment zone at the end of your turn, score D3 victory points instead. And Secure Objective 3, score 1 victory point if you control Objective Marker 3 at the end of your turn. And Objective Marker 4 is right here next to these Tactical Marines. And Objective Marker 3 is right here next to these Tactical Marines. Going into the movement phase, this Skull Cannon will remain still. And this Skull Cannon will remain still. This squad of Bloodletters is going to move up the board 6 inches, and they will also declare an advance. And here's their advance roll, getting 3 additional inches for 9 inches of total movement. And they will finish their movement right here, and they are now within 3 inches of the center of objective marker 6. The Demon Prince of Khorne, which is now down to 4 wounds, is going to move 12 inches up the board towards the Ultramarines deployment zone. And it will finish its movement right here. Finally, this squad of Bloodletters is going to move this direction 6 inches and will also declare an advance. And here's their advance roll, getting 5 additional inches for 11 inches of total movement. And those Bloodletters will finish their movement right here. So now at the end of the movement phase, all 4 of these units are going to tear their way into reality and deploy onto the battlefield. So this Bloodthirster deep struck in from the warp and is 9 inches away from that Stormraven. It'll need a 9-inch charge to make it in. Scarbrand deep struck in here and is just over 9 inches away from that Stormraven. This squad of Bloodletters deep struck in here, and they are within 6 inches of Scarbrand, and they are just over 9 inches away from that Tactical Marine squad. And finally, this Bloodthirster deep struck in here and is just over 9 inches away from this Tactical Marine squad. So now, going into the shooting phase, this Skull Cannon will fire at this Tactical Marine squad on objective marker 4. Starting with D6 shots, hitting 2 shots. Hitting on 3s, fails to hit. And now this Skull Cannon will shoot the same Tactical Marine squad. So D6 shots, hitting 3 shots. Hitting on 3s, hitting 2 hits. Wounding on 2s, hitting 2 wounds. Minus 2 AP, but plus 1 for being in a ruin, so 2 4-up armor saves. And they fail both. So 2 regular Marines will go down. And so now going into the assault phase, there are 5 charges to declare. First is this Bloodthirster declaring a charge onto the Stormraven. Second is the Demon Prince of Khorne declaring a charge onto this Stormraven and a multi-charge onto Rabout Guilliman in the back. Scarbrand will declare a charge onto this Stormraven. These Bloodletters will declare a charge onto that squad of Tactical Marines. And finally, this Bloodthirster will declare a charge onto these Tactical Marines. And so we will start with this Bloodthirster onto those Tactical Marines and start with their Overwatch. Starting with 4 bolt guns in rapid fire range, hitting on 6s, and getting 4 hits, and 4 rerolls thanks to Guilliman. And the 4 rerolls, getting 1 more hit, wounding on 5s, and getting 1 wound and 4 rerolls. And here's the 4 rerolls, getting 2 more wounds. So 3 3-up armor saves, passes 2 and fails 1. So this Bloodthirster will drop from 16 starting wounds down to 15. And then the last cannon will fire, needing a 6, and it fails to hit, but getting a reroll thanks to Guilliman, and still fails to hit. So now the charge range from the Bloodthirster, needing 9 inches, fails with a 7, but it gets a second chance, and it fails with a 4. Why is it that my Bloodthirsters do not want to make charge rolls? So then this squad of Bloodletters will declare its charge into the Tactical Marines, and they will get to Overwatch. 4 bolt guns in rapid fire range, 8 shots hitting on 6s. All fail to hit and no rerolls for this squad. So then the one last cannon shot hitting on a 6 and fails to hit. And now their charge distance, needing a 9, and they fail with a 4. However, they are within 6 inches of Scarbrand, so they will get to reroll. And needing 9 inches, and they fail with a 6. So those Bloodletters don't want to make it in either. So next, Scarbrand will declare its charge, and the Stormraven will Overwatch. Starting with 2 Hurricane Bolters, 24 shots, hitting on 6s. And of course, getting 7 hits to start with 17 rerolls. I will put these 7 6s off to the side. So here's the 17 rerolls. Getting 4 more hits for 11 hits total out of 24 shots, needing 6s. Wounding on 5s. And starting with 2 wounds. Here's the rerolls. Getting 3 more wounds for 5 wounds total. 5 3-up armor saves. Passes 4 and fails 1. And so Scarbrand will drop from 16 starting wounds down to 15. So now the twin heavy bolter, 6 shots hitting on 6s, getting 1 hit and 5 rerolls. And here's the 5 rerolls, failing to get any more hits. Wounding on 5, and it wounds. Minus 1 AP, so 1 4-up armor save, which fails. So now Scarbrand will go from 15 wounds down to 14. 2 Stormstrike missile launchers hitting on 6s, both fail to hit, but getting 2 rerolls and still fail to hit. And so then the Stormraven is going to fire standard shots in order to not risk taking mortal wounds. So 2d3 standard shots with the twin heavy plasma cannon, and getting 4 shots. Hitting on 6s, getting 1 hit and 3 rerolls, and the 3 rerolls still failing to hit and getting a 1, so it's a good thing they're using standard shots this time. Wounding on a 4, and it wounds. 1 5-up invulnerable save, which passed anyways. So now here's the charge distance for Scarbrand, needing 9 inches, and fails with a 6. And here's the reroll, and fails with another 6. What is with Khorne being unable to make 9-inch charges? You know what it is? It's because 9 is the number of Tzeentch. If it was 8-inch charges that they would need, then Khorne would make all of their charges. But because it's 9s, they're just automatically going to fail them all. So next, this Bloodthirster will charge in order to try to draw the Overwatch from the Stormraven. Starting with the 2 Stormstrike missile launchers, hitting on 6s, getting 1 hit and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, getting just 1 hit. Wounding on a 3, and it wounds. 1 5-up invulnerable save, which fails. So this Bloodthirster will drop from 16 starting wounds down to 13. Now the Stormraven will fire its twin heavy plasma cannon, and it will fire supercharged shots onto the Bloodthirster. So 2d3 supercharged shots, only getting 2 shots. Hitting on 6s, both fail to hit. Getting 2 rerolls, and both still fail to hit. So now the twin heavy bolter, 6 shots, hitting on 6s. And getting 1 hit and 5 misses. With 5 rerolls, and getting 3 more hits for 4 hits total. Wounding on 5s, and getting 3 wounds to start, and 1 reroll, which fails to wound. So 3 4-up armor saves, fails 2 of them. So this Bloodthirster will drop from 13 wounds down to 11. And so as of right now, had that Demon Prince charged first instead of the Bloodthirster, that Demon Prince would have just been killed off, since it was down to only 4 wounds. So finally, the 2 Hurricane Bolters, 24 shots, hitting on 6s. And starting with 5 hits, and we'll put those hits off to the side, and 19 rerolls. Getting 2 additional hits for 7 hits total. Wounding on 5s, and getting 2 wounds so far, and 5 rerolls, failing to get any more wounds. So 2 3-up armor saves, and fails 1. So the Bloodthirster will drop from 11 wounds down to 10 left. So now, can the Bloodthirster make a 9-inch charge? And it can't with a 7. But it gets 1 more chance, and it fails with an 8! Oh no! And it fails with an 8. So all 4 units that deep struck in this turn failed 2 9-inch charges apiece. That is 8 failed 9-inch charges. Oh, that's horrible. And so now the Demon Prince is going to declare its multi-charge against Guilliman and the Stormraven. And we will start with the Overwatch from the Stormraven first. 2 Stormstrike missile launchers, hitting on 6s, and both fail to hit. Getting 2 rerolls, and still fail to hit. So now the twin heavy plasma cannon, which will fire supercharged shots. 2 D3 shots, getting 3 shots. And the Ultramarines are going to use 1 command point, going from 7 down to 6 in order to re-roll the 2. First, do they get the command point back on a 5-up? And they do not. So the Ultramarines are permanently down to 6 command points. But do they get more shots from the re-roll? They get 1 more shot for 4 shots total. Hitting on 6s. All fail to hit. And the re-rolls. And so all 4 shots from the twin heavy plasma cannon fail to hit, and also roll 3 1s. And since it's supercharged shots, that's 3 mortal wounds onto the Stormraven. But the Ultramarines are going to use the stratagem Armor of Contempt for 1 command point. Use this stratagem when an Adeptus Astartes vehicle suffers a mortal wound. Roll a d6 for that mortal wound and each other mortal wound inflicted on this model for the rest of the phase. On a 5-up, that mortal wound is ignored and has no effect. So first, on a 5-up, do they get the command point back? And they do not. So the Ultramarines are permanently now down to 5 command points. So looking for 3 5-ups and not getting any. And so the Stormraven drops from 14 starting wounds down to 11 left. Now for 6 shots from the twin heavy bolter, hitting on 6s. All fail to hit. And here's the rerolls. Still all fail to hit. So finally, the 2 hurricane bolters, 24 shots, hitting on 6s. And so starting with 2 hits. And so the 22 rerolls. There's the 6s. So getting an additional 6 hits for 8 hits total. Wounding on 5s. Only getting 1 wound so far. And here's the 7 rerolls. Only getting 1 more wound. 2 3-up armor saves, which both passed. So now Guilliman will overwatch, and he is within 12-inch rapid fire range, so 6 shots with the hand of a minion hitting on 6s, getting 1 hit and 5 rerolls. And here's the 5 rerolls, all failing to hit still. Wounding on a 4, fails to wound. And here's the reroll, gets a wound. 1 4-up armor save, which passes. So now the charge range from the Demon Prince, getting 6 inches. And thanks to the crater that Guilliman is sitting in, 6 inches is not enough to get into combat with Guilliman, but the Demon Prince will make it into combat with the Storm Raven. And so finally, on our 9th attempt, the Chaos Demons of Khorne have a successful charge. And so the Demon Prince with Skull Reaver is going to put all of his attacks onto the Storm Raven, 6 attacks with Skull Reaver on the charge, plus 1 additional attack from its Malefic Talon. So starting with the 6 attacks from Skull Reaver, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, and getting 6 hits. Wounding on 3s, getting 4 wounds and no automatic mortal wounds. So 4d6 damage, and it'll do 16 damage. So that would have killed off the Storm Raven even without taking those 3 mortal wounds from the heavy plasma cannon. And the Storm Raven does not have a save because it only has a 3-up armor save, and the Skull Reaver is minus 4 AP, and he doesn't have an invuln. So on a 6, does it crash and burn? And it does not. And so the Centurions will end up here, over an inch away from the Demon Prince, but within 3 inches of the base of the Storm Raven. And here's the Chaplain right here. This is the Chaplain with the Armor Indomitus, and this will mean that the Storm Raven is removed. And the Demon Prince will choose not to consolidate because it doesn't want to suffer a bunch of hits from those Centurions and be killed off in the Khorne turn. But the Ultramarines do have to roll 4 dice, 1 dice for each of the models that disembarked from that transport since it was an emergency disembarkation. So 4 dice, anything but 1s, and all survive. So then going into the morale phase, this squad of tactical marines did lose 2 models. However, the sergeant, who normally has a leadership of 8, has a leadership of 9 since he is an Ultramarine sergeant, so it is impossible to fail their morale check after only losing 2 models. And so, taking a look at the tactical objective cards, Chaos Demons of Khorne failed to secure Objective 4. They do, however, have 1 unit completely within the Ultramarines deployment zone, which would be the Bloodthirster that deep struck in behind enemy lines, so they get 1 victory point for that. But they failed to secure Objective 3. And at this point, Chaos Demons of Khorne are going to throw secure Objective 4 away. And so, at the end of Chaos Demons of Khorne turn 1, the score currently sits at 1 victory point for the Chaos Demons of Khorne and 3 victory points for the Ultramarines. Going into Ultramarines turn 2, a reminder that the Ultramarines have 5 command points left and the Chaos Demons of Khorne have 0 command points left. Also a reminder, the Ultramarines held on to Big Game Hunter from the previous turn. And so the Ultramarines only draw 2 new tactical objective cards, and they draw Mission Critical Objective. When this tactical objective is generated, roll a d6, score 1 victory point if you control the corresponding objective marker. If the corresponding objective marker was controlled by your opponent at the start of your turn, and you control it at the end of your turn, score d3 victory points instead. And so here's that dice roll, and it will be Objective 2. And the second card that the Ultramarines drew is Psychological Warfare. Score 1 victory point if your opponent failed a morale test during this turn. If your opponent failed 3 or more morale tests, score d3 victory points instead. And Objective Marker 2 is this one right here in the shadow of this ruin, and it is currently being held by these bloodletters. So going into the movement phase, we will start by having this Storm Raven, which is going to drop into hover mode, and the Centurions and the Chaplain inside will disembark. And they will all disembark right here. Now the Centurions are going to move 4 inches up the board towards Scarbrand. And now the Chaplain will move 6 inches up the board to be next to the Centurions where they ended their movement. And so the Chaplain ended his movement here, and the Centurions ended their movement here, very close to Scarbrand. Now this squad of 5 tactical marines is going to move 6 inches up the board towards the Bloodletters. And so they will finish their movement right here. This tactical marine squad will remain still. This tactical Marine squad will remain still. These Centurions are going to move 4 inches up the board, and they will finish their movement right here. Now this Chaplain is going to move 6 inches up the board, and the Chaplain will finish his movement here. He is slightly closer to the Demon Prince than he is to the Bloodthirster. This Storm Raven is going to move back this direction up to 20 inches now that it's in hover mode, and it will finish its movement right here. Finally, Guilliman is going to move 8 inches over in this direction, and he will finish his movement here, which means he's within 6 inches of this tactical squad, these Centurions, at least where they're at right now, and the Storm Raven. So, going into the shooting phase, the Chaplain is going to start by shooting its Combi Flamer at the Demon Prince of Khorne. Starting with the bolt gun, 2 shots, hitting on 4s, getting 1 hit, wounding on a 5, and fails to wound. D6 shots with the Flamer, getting 3 shots, hitting on 5s, or wounding on 5s I should say, because it automatically hits, and getting 2 wounds. 2 3-up armor saves, passes 1 and fails 1. And so the Demon Prince will drop from 4 wounds down to 3. So now Guilliman will fire, and he will shoot the Demon Prince of Khorne with Skull Reaver because it is the closest visible enemy unit, and it is within 12 inches for rapid fire. 6 shots, hitting on 2s. Getting all hits, wounding on 4s, only getting 1 wound so far, but getting 5 rerolls, and gets 2 more wounds. 3 4-up armor saves, passes 2 and fails 1, but they are 2 damage apiece, and so the Demon Prince will go from 3 wounds down to 1 left. So now this tactical Marine squad will fire into these Bloodletters, starting with the last cannon, hitting on a 4 since it moved, and it hits, wounding on a 2. And it wounds. 1 5-up invulnerable save, which fails. So 1 Bloodletter will go down. And now the 4 bolt guns in rapid fire range. 8 shots, hitting on 3s, getting 6 hits. Wounding on 3s, getting 3 wounds. 3 5-up invulnerable saves, and they fail all 3. So 3 Bloodletters will go down, leaving 6 left. So now this squad of Centurions will fire, and the 2 regular Centurions will fire their flamers into Scarbrand, but the Centurion Sergeant is going to fire its flamers into these Bloodletters because they are just within 8-inch range, and he can see them through the windows of the ruin. So starting with the 2 flamers onto the Bloodletters, 2 D6 shots, hitting 11 shots. Wounding on 3s, getting 7 wounds, and because Guilliman's close by, 4 rerolls. And so here's the rerolls, getting 3 more wounds. 10 5-up invulnerable saves, and they pass 3 but fail 7. And so this squad of 6 Bloodletters is wiped out, and these Ultramarines are now controlling Objective Marker 2, which Khorne was controlling at the beginning of the turn. So now 4 D6 Flamer shots onto Scarbrand, getting 13 shots. Flamers automatically hit, so 13 hits, and wounding on 5s, getting 3 wounds and 10 rerolls. And here's the rerolls, getting 2 more wounds. 5 3-up armor saves, passes 4 and fails 1. So Scarbrand will drop from 14 wounds down to 13. And so now this Chaplain is going to shoot this squad of Bloodletters, and they are just within 8-inch range for the Flamer portion of the Combi Flamer. And we will start with the D6 shots from the Flamer. Getting 2 shots. Automatically hits, so 2 hits. And wounding on 3s, getting 1 wound. And he is not within 6 inches of Guilliman. So 1 5-up invulnerable save, which fails. So 1 Bloodletter will go down. And so now the bolt gun. 2 shots, hitting on 4s. Both failed to hit. This squad of Centurions is going to fire all 6 Flamers into this squad of Bloodletters. So 6 D6 shots, and getting 27 shots. This weapon automatically hits, so 27 hits. Wounding on 3s with 1 cocked dice. And here's the cocked dice, and it's still cocked. So rerolling cocked dice a second time, and there we go. And getting 17 wounds. 17 5-up invulnerable saves, and they pass 6 but fail 11. And so this squad of 10 Bloodletters is annihilated. So now this tactical Marine squad is going to fire everything it has into the Demon Prince of Khorne with 1 wound left, since they are the closest visible enemy unit, and the bolt guns are within 12-inch range for rapid fire. So starting with the 2 bolt guns, 4 shots hitting on 3s, rerolling 1 since they are within 12 inches of Guilliman. Here's the reroll, getting 4 hits. wounding on 5s, and getting 1 wound. 1 3-up armor save, which passes. So now the last cannon, hitting on a 3, and it hits, wounding on a 3, and it fails to wound. The Ultramarines are going to use 1 command point, going from 5 down to 4, in order to use a command reroll to reroll that dice. So first on a 5-up, do they get the command point back? And they do not. So the Ultramarines are permanently down to 4 command points, and now for the reroll on the wound roll, and it does wound. So 1 5-up invulnerable save, which passes. So now this Storm Raven is going to fire everything it has into this Bloodthirster, and the Bloodthirster is 12.5 inches away from the Storm Raven, so the Storm Raven will not have rapid fire on its Hurricane Bolters. So starting with 2 Storm Strike missile launchers hitting on 3s. Both fail to hit, but it's within 6 inches of Gilmon, so 2 rerolls, and getting 1 hit. Wounding on a 3, fails to wound, getting a reroll, and it wounds. 1 5-up invulnerable save, which passes. So next, the Storm Raven will fire supercharged shots from the twin heavy plasma cannon into that Bloodthirster. 2 D3 shots, getting 4 shots. So 4 supercharged shots hitting on 3s, getting 3 hits, and 1 reroll, which gets a 4th hit. Wounding on 3s, getting 2 wounds and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls, getting 1 more wound. 3 5-up invulnerable saves, passes 1 and fails 2. So this Bloodthirster will drop from 15 remaining wounds down to 11. So now 6 shots from the twin heavy bolter, hitting on 3s, getting 5 hits and 1 reroll. And the reroll, getting all 6 hits. Wounding on 5s, getting 1 wound and 5 rerolls. And here's the 5 rerolls, getting 3 more wounds for 4 wounds total. 4 4-up armor saves, passes 3 and fails 1. So the Bloodthirster will drop from 11 wounds down to 10. So finally, the 2 Hurricane Bolters, 12 shots, hitting on 3s, getting 8 hits and 4 misses. And the 4 rerolls, getting 2 more hits. Wounding on 5s, and getting 2 wounds so far. And here's the 8 rerolls, getting 2 more wounds. 4 3-up armor saves, and fails 2 of them. So the Bloodthirster will drop from 10 wounds down to 8 left. And so then finally, this Tactical Marine squad will fire at that Bloodthirster. And all 4 bolt guns are in rapid fire range, so 8 shots hitting on 3s. Getting 4 hits and 4 rerolls. And here's the 4 rerolls, getting 7 hits total. Wounding on 5s, getting 3 wounds and 4 rerolls. So here's the 4 rerolls, getting 2 more wounds. 5 3-up armor saves, passes 4 and fails 1. So the Bloodthirster will drop from 8 wounds down to 7. And so now the last cannon, 1 shot, hitting on a 3, and it fails to hit. Rerolling, and gets a hit. Wounding on a 3, and it wounds. 1 5-up invulnerable save, which fails. And this will do D6 damage, and it'll do 5 damage. And so this Bloodthirster will drop from 7 remaining wounds down to 2 left. So going into the assault phase, there are 4 charges to declare. The first is this group of Centurions will charge this Bloodthirster. The second is this Chaplain will charge the Demon Prince of Khorne. The third is that this Chaplain will charge Skarbrand. And the fourth is that this Centurion squad will charge Skarbrand. So we will start with this Centurion squad against Skarbrand. Starting with Overwatch from the Bellow of Endless Fury. Doing 3 shots. Strength 5 versus Toughness 5 means 4s to wound, getting 2 wounds. 2 3-up armor saves, passes 1 and fails 1. And so the Centurion in the back will go from 3 starting wounds down to 2. Now for their charge distance, getting 4 inches. And so all 3 of them will make it into combat. However, only 2 will be within an inch of Skarbrand for their Centurion assault launchers. So the Ultramarines are looking for 2 4-ups, and they get 1. So 1 mortal wound onto Skarbrand will reduce him from 13 wounds down to 12. Now the Chaplain will charge in and get 7 inches. And so this Chaplain will make it into combat. So then next, this Chaplain will charge the Demon Prince. And here's the charge range, getting 10 inches. So this Chaplain will end up right here, just within an inch of the Demon Prince. And now these Centurions will charge into that Bloodthirster. And here's their charge roll, getting 4 inches, which will be enough for them to make it in since they're not charging through a crater. However, they would like to try to get more models into base to base, or within an inch, I should say, for the Centurion assault launchers. So they will use 1 command point, going from 4 down to 3 for a command reroll in order to reroll that dice. So first, on a 5-up, do they get the command point back? And they do not. So now rerolling the 1 charge dice, and now they have 7 inches of charge. And so now all 3 of them will be within an inch of the Bloodthirster. And also, I had forgotten to mention this, but this does reduce the Ultramarines down to 3 command points permanently. So first, the 3 Centurion assault launchers looking for 4-ups, and they get 1. And so this Bloodthirster will be reduced from 10 wounds down to 9 left. So going into the fight phase, we will start with these Centurions onto the Bloodthirster. 7 attacks with the siege drills, hitting on 3s. Getting 5 hits and 2 rerolls thanks to being within 6 inches of the chaplain. And so here's the 2 rerolls, getting all 7 hits. And wounding on 3s, and getting 4 wounds. 4 5-up invulnerable saves. Passes 2 and fails 2. And siege drills are 3 damage apiece, so the Bloodthirster is reduced from 9 wounds down to 3 left. Now we will resolve this chaplain against the Demon Prince with 1 wound left. 3 attacks with his Crozius Arcanum, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s thanks to himself, and getting 3 hits. Strength 5 versus Toughness 6 means 5s to wound, and getting 1 wound. And now that it's the fight phase, the Ultramarines are going to use 1 command point, going from 3 down to 2 in order to re-roll one of those failed wound rolls. But first, on a 5-up, do they get the command point back? And they do. So they will stay at 3 command points. So can they get another 5 for the wound roll? And they do not. But the 1 wound that does go through is minus 1 AP, so the Demon Prince will have 1 4-up armor save. And it passes. So now the Ultramarines will resolve these Centurions onto Scarbrand. And so the Centurions, since they are within 8 inches of Scarbrand, have +1 attack apiece. So 10 attacks from the siege drills, hitting on 3s. And re-rolling thanks to the chaplain, but not that they really needed it because they got 9 hits to start. And here's the re-roll, getting all 10 hits. Wounding on 3s. This is where we could have used the re-rolls, only getting 4 wounds. 4 5-up invulnerable saves. And fails all 4, which does 12 damage. And that is exactly what those Centurions needed to do in order to kill off Scarbrand and achieve Slay the Warlord. And so then these units will consolidate a couple of inches, and they will finish their consolidation here. So now Khorne will get to strike back, and they will start with their Bloodthirster onto the Centurions. Now that the Bloodthirster is down to 3 wounds, he only has 2 attacks base, +1 for being charged, so 3 attacks total. However, he's also down to a 4-up weapon skill, and unfortunately, he is about 6.5 inches away from the Demon Prince of Khorne, which means he will not get to reroll hit rolls of 1, and since the Centurions are 3 wounds apiece, he will attack with Mighty Strike. So 3 attacks, hitting on 4s, getting 2 hits, wounding on 2s, only gets 1 wound. -4 AP, so 1 6-up armor save, which passes! Whoa, okay. So that Bloodthirster does nothing. And so then, this Demon Prince will strike against the Chaplain. Since the Demon Prince was charged, he has 6 attacks with his Skull Reaver and 1 additional attack with its Malefic Talon. So starting with the 6 attacks from Skull Reaver, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s. And a good thing for those rerolls, getting 3 hits and 3 rerolls. And the 3 rerolls, getting 2 more hits. So getting 5 hits total. Wounding on 2s, and getting 3 wounds along with 2d3 mortal wounds. So starting with the 2d3 mortal wounds, and that will wipe out the Chaplain. And so this Chaplain with the Armor Indomitus is wiped out, and the Demon Prince will not consolidate because he would have to consolidate closer to the Centurions, and he wants to move closer to Guilliman next turn. And so now that the fight phase is over, the Ultramarines are going to use the stratagem Honor the Chapter for 3 command points, which will use their final 3 command points. Use this stratagem at the end of the fight phase, select an Adeptus Astartes Infantry or Adeptus Astartes Biker unit. That unit can immediately fight for a second time. So obviously, the Ultramarines unit that will fight a second time will be this Centurion squad, since that's the only Ultramarines unit that's still in combat. But first, we need to roll a dice for each one of those command points, and on a 5-up, command points are returned. And no command points are returned, which means the Ultramarines are now officially out of command points for the rest of the game. So now we will do the attacks from the Centurions onto the Bloodthirster, 7 attacks with the siege drills, hitting on 3s, and no rerolls now that that chaplain has been killed off, but getting 5 hits, wounding on 3s, and getting 3 wounds, 3 5-up invulnerable saves, and fails all 3, which does 9 damage. And so this Bloodthirster is killed off. And the Centurions will not consolidate, as they would like to move into the Chaos Demons of Khorne deployment zone next turn. So going into the morale phase, this squad of Bloodletters lost 1 model. However, they have a leadership of 7, and therefore it would be impossible for them to fail a morale check. And so, taking a look at the tactical objective cards, the Ultramarines did complete Big Game Hunter for 1 victory point, and they also completed Mission Critical Objective Marker 2, and they took it from Khorne, which means they get D3 victory points. And so here's the roll for the victory points, and they get 3 victory points. But the Ultramarines failed to complete Psychological Warfare, and so they will throw that tactical objective card away. And so at the end of Ultramarines turn 2, the score currently sits at 8 victory points for the Ultramarines, thanks to Slay the Warlord, and 1 victory point for the Chaos Demons of Khorne. So going into Chaos Demons of Khorne turn 2, a reminder that the Chaos Demons of Khorne have 0 command points left, and now the Ultramarines have 0 command points left. Also a reminder that the Chaos Demons of Khorne held onto the tactical objective card Secure Objective 3 from the previous turn. So the Chaos Demons of Khorne draw 2 new tactical objective cards, and they draw no prisoners. Score 1 victory point if an enemy unit was destroyed during your turn. If between 3 and 5 enemy units were destroyed during your turn, score D3 victory points instead. And if 6 or more enemy units were destroyed during your turn, score D3 plus 3 victory points instead. And advance, score 1 victory point if no unit from your army is within your deployment zone at the end of your turn. So going into the movement phase, we will start with this Bloodthirster, and since it is down to 2 wounds left, it only has 6 inches of movement, and so it will move up the board 6 inches, and the Bloodthirster will finish its movement right here. So now this Demon Prince is going to move 12 inches up the board over to here in an attempt to kill Guilliman. And he will finish his movement here just over an inch away. This Skull Cannon will remain still. This Skull Cannon will remain still. This squad of Bloodletters is going to move 6 inches towards these Centurions, and they will finish their movement here just over an inch away. So going into the shooting phase, we will start with this Skull Cannon shooting those Centurions. So D6 shots, getting 2 shots. Hitting on 3s, getting 2 hits. Wounding on 3s, getting 2 wounds. 2 4-up armor saves, passes 1 and fails 1. And this will do D3 damage, and it'll do 1 damage. So 1 Centurion will drop from 3 wounds down to 2. Now the other Skull Cannon will also shoot the same Centurion squad. D6 shots, hitting 4 shots, hitting on 3s, getting 2 hits, wounding on 3s, getting 2 wounds, 2 4-up armor saves, fails both. These do D3 damage apiece, but if the first roll is only a 1 on the D3, then the second roll doesn't matter because it will only finish off the final wound on that wounded Centurion. So the first roll does 3 damage, and so the wounded Centurion is killed off. And so then the second roll also does 3 damage, which kills off the second regular Centurion, leaving only the Sergeant left. And that's it for shooting, so going into the assault phase, this squad of Bloodletters will declare charge onto the Centurion. The Demon Prince will declare charge onto Guilliman, and this Bloodthirster will declare charge onto those Tactical Marines. And so we will start with the Bloodthirster. So first we will do the Overwatch from the Tactical Marines, starting with the last cannon, hitting on a 6. And it fails to hit, but re-rolling thanks to being within 6 inches of Guilliman, and still fails to hit. So now 4 bolt guns in rapid fire range, 8 shots hitting on 6s, getting 2 hits so far, and the rerolls, getting 1 additional hit, wounding on 5s, getting 2 wounds so far, and 1 reroll, so just 2 wounds, 2 3-up armor saves, and passes both. So now for the Bloodthirster's charge distance. Gets 8 inches. And so the Bloodthirster will make it into combat. And so now the Demon Prince onto Guilliman. Starting with the 6 shots from the Hand of Dominion in Overwatch first. Hitting on 6s. Hitting 1 hit. And 5 rerolls. Still getting no more hits. Wounding on a 4. Fails to wound. And the 1 reroll. Getting a wound. 1 4-up armor save. And it fails. Of course. -1 AP strikes again. And this Demon Prince is killed off. So then finally, the charge from the Bloodletters onto the Centurion. And first, the Overwatch, 2 D6 shots. Getting 12 shots, of course. It automatically hits, so 12 hits. Wounding on 3s. And getting 9 wounds. 9 5-up invulnerable saves. And they pass 2, but fail 7. And so 7 Bloodletters are killed off. Leaving 1 normal Bloodletter and the Blood Reaper left, and they're both just over an inch away, so they both automatically make it into combat. And we'll resolve the Bloodletters first. 5 attacks on the charge, hitting on 3s, and getting 3 hits. Wounding on 4s, and only getting 1 wound, and it's not even double damage. -3 AP, so 1 5-up armor save, which goes through. So the Centurion will drop from 3 wounds down to 2. And now for the Bloodthirster's attacks onto the Tactical Marines. 2 attacks base, +1 for charging for 3 attacks base, and the Bloodthirster will use Sweeping Blow, so he will actually have 6 attacks base. 6 attacks, hitting on 4s. Oh, and only getting 1 hit, and it's not even a 6. So just 1 hit on the Tactical Marines. Why is it that Bloodthirsters have no rerolls? So, wounding on a 2. And it wounds. -2 AP. So 1 5-up invulnerable save, or 1 5-up armor save, I should say, and 1 Tactical Marine will go down. And so 1 Tactical Marine will go down. And now they will pile in as much as possible. And so 2 regular Marines with bolt guns and the Sergeant will be able to attack back against the Bloodthirster. The last cannon is too far away. So 4 attacks, hitting on 3s, and getting 4 hits. Wounding on 5s. And getting 2 wounds and no rerolls because they are no longer within 6 inches of Guilliman. So 2 3-up armor saves. And the Bloodthirster passes both. And so now the Centurion Sergeant will get to hit back against the Bloodletters. 3 attacks, hitting on 3s, getting 3 hits. Wounding on 2s, getting 3 wounds. 3 5-up invulnerable saves. And they fail all 3. And so the final 2 Bloodletters are removed. And the Centurion Sergeant will now consolidate a couple of inches towards the closest visible enemy unit, which is a Skull Cannon. And going into the morale phase, this tactical squad does not have to take a morale test because they lost 1 model, but the Sergeant has a leadership of 9 since they're Ultramarines, so it is impossible for them to fail. And this Centurion squad lost 2 models this turn, but because of being Ultramarines, the Centurion Sergeant has a leadership of 9 as well, so it is impossible for them to fail. So taking a look at the tactical objective cards, they failed to get no prisoners because those Centurions decided to stay alive, and the Tactical Marines decided to not be killed off from the Bloodthirster, and Guilliman was able to kill the Demon Prince in Overwatch, so he didn't have to suffer any wounds in close combat, so they failed no prisoners. There are 2 Skull Cannons sitting in their deployment zone, so they failed to get advance, and because those Tactical Marines stayed alive, and they are a troop choice, they are holding Objective 3, which means Khorne failed to get Objective 3 as well. And so because of that, at the end of Chaos Demons of Khorne Turn 2, the score currently sits at 1 victory point for the Chaos Demons of Khorne and 8 victory points for the Ultramarines. And the Chaos Demons of Khorne only have 2 Skull Cannons and 1 Bloodthirster that's down to 2 wounds left. So the Chaos Demons of Khorne are going to concede the game, but that means that the Chaos Demons of Khorne have a Bloodthirster in the Ultramarines deployment zone for Linebreaker, which brings the Chaos Demons of Khorne up to a grand total of 2 victory points. But the Ultramarines still have 8 victory points, and the Ultramarines will have a major victory thanks to a Chaos Demons of Khorne concession. And so now that it's been announced that the Ultramarines are the victors, with a final victory point score of 8 victory points versus 2. I can go over 1 or 2 of my final thoughts on this game. There's not really much to talk about, other than that, for the most part, the Ultramarines had decent luck, and the Chaos Demons of Khorne had absolutely awful luck. I know I mentioned it in Chaos Demons of Khorne Turn 1, but how the Chaos Demons of Khorne failed all 4 9-inch charges with 2 attempts per charge is just insane to me. It boggles my mind, and it completely messed the game up for them, because without making any of those charges, it gave the Ultramarines essentially almost another full turn of almost all their units being able to fire at everything. Now, obviously, the Demon Prince got into combat and killed off the Storm Raven, but that didn't really make much of a difference, because that was the only thing that they killed off that turn. I mean, the only full units that the Ultramarines lost this entire game was the one Storm Raven and the Chaplain with the Armor Indominus. That's it. That's the only units that were fully killed off on the Ultramarine side. They lost a couple Tactical Marines from a couple different squads, but those squads still are around with their last cannons, which is the important weapon. And that Centurion squad lost 2 regular Centurions, but the Sergeant was just a beast and just took on those bloodletters like a champ and finished them off. So, I mean, there's a really good chance that even if he had died, the bloodletters still would have been finished off because they probably still would have failed a morale check. But, I mean, just the fact that Centurion Sergeant stayed alive, which means now he can move up the board in Ultramarines turn 3, if it had gone to Ultramarines turn 3, and could have engaged a Skull Cannon. Just, of course, he stays alive. And of course, Guilliman finished off the Demon Prince in Overwatch, which I was worried about, but of course that was partially what influenced the target that the Demon Prince went after. I mean, if the Demon Prince had all of its wounds, or still had half of its wounds, I would have tried to send it after the Storm Raven, because that would have been a better target. Would have been a more important target to take down. I mean, Guilliman's an important target to take down, but the Storm Raven could do more firepower overall. Guilliman's aura of abilities are very powerful, and Khorne wants to get rid of that, but the bigger immediate threat is the various weapons from that Storm Raven. So would have tried to take out the Storm Raven, but I was worried that the Demon Prince was going to die in Overwatch, and he did, just against 6 shots from a Hand of Dominion rather than 24 Hurricane Bolter shots and 6 Heavy Bolter shots and 2d3 Heavy Plasma Cannon shots and 2 Storm Strike Missile Launcher shots. I mean, it was just a bad situation for Khorne. I mean, I was surprised that the Demon Prince not only survived the fight with the Chaplain, but then just blew away the Chaplain. Didn't even give him a chance to use the Armor Indominus. Was just like, nope, 6 mortal wounds with the Skull Reaver. You're just gone. Nothing you can do about that. And especially when the Skull Cannons took out 2 of the Centurions. I really thought those Bloodletters were going to at least, do mutually assured destruction and kill off that Centurion Sergeant. I'm very surprised at how that fight went. But, that was really good luck on the Ultramarines' part. Rolled 2 6s for the Overwatch, of course. 12 shots with the Flamer. Of course, why not? Automatically hit. Wound on 3s. Wiped 7 of the Bloodletters out in an instant, which really changed the face of that combat. But, yeah, there's not really much for me to talk about this turn. About this game, I should say. Very similar to how the first matchup between these 2 armies went 2 battle reports ago. Apparently, if this army gets turn 1, they are most likely going to just outright run away with the victory. Although, to be fair, it might be a different story against the Death Guard and Tzeentch, because Death Guard and Tzeentch won't be placing a bunch of units in the Warp the way that Khorne has. And I don't think placing the units in the Warp is what hurt Khorne. I think what hurt Khorne is the fact that they didn't make those charges. I mean, the problem is, I think either it would have ended up the same if those units had been on the field at the beginning, because they wouldn't have been able to charge turn 1 anyways then. So they just would have been shot in Ultramarines turn 1. So I don't know. But there needs to be, if I play Khorne this way again in the future, because of course this is the last Khorne battle for this group, so we won't see Chaos Demons of Khorne again for a while. But if I play them again in the future, I'm going to have to bring different ways to help those charges. You know, bring instruments on the Bloodletter squads, bring larger groups of Bloodletters with the banners that can use the stratagems that they once per game can roll 3 dice instead of 2 for their charge. I mean, that would really help, because trying to roll a charge roll of an 8 with 3 dice versus a charge roll of a 9 on 2 dice, that's a pretty big difference. So I might have to try that in the future. So I hope you enjoyed, and stay tuned for the next one.